So we've been talking about backups, but what is a backup? A backup is nothing but a copy of your files and programs. So you can take backups of user level information. You can take backups of system level information. You can also take backups of things like your documentation regarding your security procedures and practices, your policies, right? So there are so many things that you can take a backup of. One word that you'll come across is something called system image. A system image is the entire contents of your hard disk, including the operating system and installed programs. So if you have a copy of your system image, you can always restore very easily. So that is one of the important things regarding backups. You must also know what to backup. It is just not about copying your stuff across. A couple of terms that I'd like you to get familiar with is in the next slide. So you will come across something called contingency planning. A contingency is something that is likely to happen, but you cannot predict, right? So one contingency planning, for example, if you have a key to your main door of the house, you have a duplicate just in case you misplace it. Now that's a contingency plan, right? Whereas a disaster is a major disruption to your service. So your business process, like for example, if you take the utility company like Duke, if they are not able to supply power, it's a disaster. You also have another word called incident, which is typically something that jeopardizes the confidentiality, integrity, or availability, an event or a circumstance, and you lose information or somebody is not following procedures. Those are incidents. So in this slide, what we're looking at is we're talking about backup storage locations. Now, these are words that I'd like you to keep in the back of your mind because it is important from the point of view of backup. So here in this slide, we are seeing a network. And in this network, what we're seeing is the desktop C1 has been backed up onto the cloud, which is offsite. Desktop C1 is also backed up on site. And we have something called near site backup. And we also have an offline local backup. So I hope there are multiple copies. Now, this is an important idea in backups. So let's look at how many copies should I take, which is what the next slide is all about. So there is a rule called the 3-to-1 rule for backups. So you have to at least take 3 copies. 2 of them should be on different media. So for example, you have one copy on a hard disk, and on the same hard disk, you have one more copy. That's a bad idea. The other copy must either be on a different hard disk or maybe on an external hard drive, storage device perhaps. And the third point is you must have at least 1 copy offsite. So for example, typical natural disasters, you can have fire, you can have earthquakes. Ransomware also is a disaster, but not a natural one, a human-made bad actor kind of event. But the point is, you must have 1 copy offsite.
And Balu, do you mind if I interject?
Of course, please, Jamie. Thank you.
Okay. So one way you can manage to get that 3 copies is to make sure you do have the offsite copy. Sure, you have your on-site copy, but also NIST and FTC, two big members in the security field, recommend that you have an offline backup. And what does that mean? It means that you have some backup media that is disconnected in every way from your source. So if you can manage to do that either through rotating drives with something as simple as Windows Server Backup, that's helpful. Because a lot of these ransomwares are capable of encrypting your backup. Now, with the scenario mentioning Durham County, theirs were not compromised, but it was very likely that it could have happened. So just keep that in mind. So offline is very important.
Thank you, Jamie. So what are the considerations for backup? So one of the points is you also need to think in terms of how quickly you need to recover, how quickly you need to restore your operations, how much of space is going to be taken. So here's a table which you can perhaps use as a planning tool, perhaps. Now, please note that SAM IT can provide these services. So in the event you're interested in going through all this in greater detail, we are always available. The other thing is a backup and recovery strategy. Now, it is very, very important to think in terms of prevention, identification or detection, and correction. Now, this particular slide is talking about correction. So in the event you have been compromised, how quickly are you planning to recover? What is your recovery strategy? Now, based on that, you need to plan your backups. As indicated here, if particular information is of a low priority, you can go with tape backup. But if you have mission critical information, you need backup, which is in the form of mirrored systems. Now, a hot site is a particular environment that is up and alive very, very quickly. Whereas a cold site is something that has to be, a little work has to be done before that can come up as an operational environment. Okay. So this particular slide is basically to help you work and think through that particular aspect of recovery. Now, last but not the least, let us say you got your backup, right? Are you sure that your backups are good? Because you're going to rely on your backups at a later point in time if required. So if you don't have a good copy, then you're in trouble anyway. So one thing that NIST recommends, or the guidelines from NIST says that please test the reliability and integrity of your backups. Make sure that your backups are not accidentally modified. Don't allow somebody else to modify your backups. Transfer them to alternate storage locations. And there is also this last point called dual authorization, which is, let us say a particular backup has to be deleted. It should need the authorization of more than one person. So for example, I should not be able to delete a backup because if I do something accidentally, then I'm putting the organization and its operations at great risk. So the idea is that there is a need to have dual authorization when it comes to deletion of backups.
For more information, click on the link below or visit databrackets.com.